There's no doubt, that you should smash the subscribe button right now on YouTube. Make sure you find us, themontyshow.com. MONTY, themontyshow.com. It'll take you right to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. I think the Utah Jazz showed us something last night. Now, granted, it was the Detroit Pistons. Let's not get cray over the Detroit Pistons.
Right.
Because, frankly, they're not a very good basketball team at this point. But the Jazz needed a win. And they needed a convincing win. And they needed to play Jazz basketball winning that game. And they very much did. And I give them a lot of credit for that. Mm-hmm. When I look at what we saw from the Jazz last night, shoot the three ball well, play good defense, and I have been a vocal opponent of Royce O'Neal's. I think he's playing much better basketball now. Mm-hmm. I still wouldn't have him in my starting five, and I still think they need a significant upgrade, and they need to find a legitimate, consistent number two option to Donovan Mitchell. Royce O'Neal has really picked up his game, and I give him a lot of credit for that. And I feel like when we look at the Utah Jazz and we look at the way that they've played basketball, this last night was who I think this team is. Rudy Gobert, limited minutes. He only plays just short of 30 minutes. Doesn't have a huge impact. Plays really good defense. Gives you, I think, 9 points or whatever it was. Mm. But you have four other starters and Jordan Clarkson in double digits, led by Donovan Mitchell. That's who this Utah Jazz team is. But here's my question. I don't think it's good enough to beat the Nuggets. I know it's not the Lakers or the Clippers.
Right.
At their best, where are the Jazz in the Western Conference?
I think they're third or fourth. They're tied with the Nuggets. I think it's the Lakers, the Clippers, then Nuggets/Jazz in that slot, depending on the game. That's where I think they are.
Well, and if that's the case, I think you have to go out and make a change. Because we've seen the Clippers now battle late in games. We're starting to see Paul George really get back to that alpha male presence. Now, can he stay healthy? That's been an issue the last 2 years.
Right.
But we're starting to see that Paul George is becoming that guy that the Clippers went out and got. And this is why it's so important that they have a number two. And I think it's that important because we're seeing that Kawhi Leonard's not always on.
Yeah, last night was brutal for Kawhi. That shot, his shot is... I mean, he's been known to have a really flat shot. Like, his shot is like a line drive almost. But last night, I mean, he give the guy credit. I mean, he has zero recall memory in terms of missing shots and that hurting his confidence. He'll just keep shooting. But at the same time, you've got a guy in Paul George who is an absolute sniper and one of the best shot makers in the league. He made a really difficult shot from the left corner towards the end of that game to make it close again, and that was pure. And so, yeah, for the Jazz, they need something. Donovan needs a partner, and I think once that happens, it takes the heat off of Rudy. It pushes guys like Royce O'Neal further down the roster, which is really what you need. You need a number two to Donovan Mitchell who can go out and get a bucket whenever. Dude, you don't have that right now, and this is where we always wind up getting to. Because you don't have that puts the magnifying glass on Rudy more because he's getting paid so much money. And, defenses understand that if we stop Donovan, we're probably going to win the game, which they didn't do last night. So it's just this team needs it desperately. They're one of the teams in the league that does not have a roster that's championship caliber. I don't care if they can get to the postseason. It's not good enough anymore. Now we're talking about, hey, what are we going to do to win the Western Conference? Hey, what are we going to do to at least make a finals appearance? I think making a finals appearance is good enough for this organization right now.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this Jazz team evolves. I think it's going to take incredible stones for the Jazz to keep this roster the way it is. I think it's going to be really difficult to sell fans that this roster is good enough to win a championship. Mm-hmm. I think especially with what we saw in the bubble, the incredible performance that we saw out of Donovan, that crushing moment where Mike Conley took that three that went out when Donovan was wide open on the opposite wing, that can never happen on this team.
Yeah.
If you're going to lose with somebody, lose with Donovan Mitchell.
And that's why I think a lot of people, when we talk about teams that aren't quite ready to win yet, like the Suns or like the Jazz, they make mistakes like that where The Suns the other night, what did they do? They got Devin Booker the ball, and what did he do? He knocked the shot down to beat the Mavericks, because that's what big-time players do.
Yes.
But then you've got the Jazz not getting the ball to Donovan Mitchell, and that doesn't allow him to make the big-time shot and be the big-time player. So the Jazz, if you're a fan, the Jazz are a bit frustrating. There's no doubt about it. They're a team that should be better. They're trying to sell you on a package that they are better, and they're not better. They're just not better yet. They need another guy.
Well, and I think some interesting comments. Ben says, you guys are always so anti-Jazz. What is the point? I don't think we're being anti-Jazz. I think we are. I'm a big believer in truth-telling. And, we used to be known as the Truth in Sports Radio because we don't hedge. We don't spin. The Jazz are not good enough to win a championship. Mm-hmm. Should you support this team? Absolutely.
They're a really good team.
Yeah.
It's not like they're a bad team.
But are we here to be a really good team?
Are we here to give out the little blue ribbon as kids soccer player get for the Jazz team? Like, is that what we're here to do?
We don't do participation points.
I mean, are we here to say, hey, like, cool, like, yeah, great game, Donovan, great game, Rudy, like, you guys are the best. Hope you enjoy making that $100 million contract.
And I think that's a tough pill for a lot of Jazz fans to swallow. I look at the way that the Jazz fans are rabid fans. They're some of the best fans in the NBA.
No doubt.
We talked about on the show yesterday, courtside Karen and LeBron. Well, all of that, I mean, one of the most notorious courtside issues was Russell Westbrook several years ago against a Jazz fan. And the Jazz fan lost. And I disagreed with that. And I think it's fine to be passionate. Jazz fans are the best Jazz, in my opinion, one of the best fan bases in the NBA.
Yeah.
But you have to be real. And I always say this, you have to know who you are and where you are as an organization if you truly want to win. You have to be able to make really tough decisions, and you have to be able to really diagnose the guys on your roster. And right now, in my opinion, I don't think that Rudy Gobert and Royce O'Neal belong on a championship team. I think Rudy Gobert has a role on this team. There's no doubt about that. It ain't $41 million a year worth of a role. That contract was a mistake. So, Ben, with all due respect, I understand why you feel like we're always negative, but it's not negativity, it's truth. And the truth is that Rudy Gobert is making $41 million, and he's not going to finish that contract on this roster. He is no different than Enes Kanter. The difference is Enes Kanter was a great offensive player who couldn't stop anybody, and Rudy Gobert is a great defensive player who can't score. That's the God's honest truth. And a lot of people will tell you, and I've had this argument, we talked about this the other day on Twitter, oh, he's a double-double machine. Cool, but when you're in the NBA, those double-doubles can't be clean up the garbage and tip dunk because he's useless the last 5 minutes of the game.
When you're getting paid $200 million, it can't just be 20 and 11 every night. It's got to be more. It's got to be more influential. There's a difference, and this is a minutia thing that maybe not a lot of fans get. I don't know, but like, getting 20 and 11 on cleanup is great. That's a great contribution, and Rudy consistently gives it. But if LeBron came out and gave you 20 and 11 without making a jump shot and without playing with his back to the basket and without one of those 20 points being a bucket at the end of the game to seal the game, would LeBron James be LeBron James? No, he would not. And that's why I'm saying Rudy Gobert as your third option is phenomenal, right? As your wingman, not phenomenal, not good enough. You got to have more flexibility, because I got news for you. NBA defenses know exactly how to stop the Jazz, and that's why we see the Jazz rely on three so much, because they get pigeonholed into shooting those threes.
Well, and I think the other thing that's becoming a trend, and I don't know how many people are paying attention to this with Rudy Gobert, 3 straight games under 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And if you look at who those teams are, it's Dallas, Denver, and Detroit. And what do those teams have in common? They have bigs that run and play the perimeter. And I know that, again, here was another huge debate on Twitter about Rudy Gobert last night or yesterday. Did Porzingis get the best of Rudy Gobert?
I mean, I would say he did, but
I don't know how you say he didn't, right? I mean, the Mavericks, they destroyed the Mavericks, 120, 101 or whatever.
It was a dominant victory, yeah, there's no doubt.
But I feel like that if you look at those matchups, I feel like there were moments in that game where Rudy Gobert just didn't have a matchup.
Yeah, so last night I'm watching the Jazz, and I'm not the biggest Twitter guy, but I felt compelled to put videos on my Twitter feed about live game shots of Rudy Gobert losing Plumlee last night on defense, and both times it leads to an easy bucket, both times, and yes, he is trying to play help defense, but one of the times he just straight up loses contain on Plumlee, and it's one of those situations where if you just watched a Jazz defensive possession where it's not a fast break situation, it's half court basketball. Rudy Gobert floats around the paint. That's all he does. He doesn't really stick to his guy because he understands that he's long enough to make up the ground typically. But against athletic bigs, like Porzingis, Jokic, Jeremy Grant.
Plumlee had 17 and 14 last night.
That's why I'm saying it's not like he shut down Plumlee. Plumlee had a nice night last night. Now, they obviously, the Jazz were fine in that game, but my point here is that if we're talking about, if Ben on Twitter is going to say, hey, why are you guys always negative? Well, really take a hard look at who Rudy Gobert is. If you just look at the numbers, sure, the numbers, you can make the numbers justify what he gets paid. But if we're going by wins, and if winning is the goal for any franchise in the league, Rudy Gobert should not be making that much money.
You can't be 9.7 boards in 29 minutes and be a -7 against the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Like that's a problem.
And by the way, it's not like Plumlee is a leading big man in the league.
No.
He's just been a staple guy around the league.
He does a job.
Name. Yeah.
He's a guy that does a job. And listen, my point is that the Gobert thing is going to be a conversation all season long. When you make $41 million, right? Mm-hmm. When you are reliant on people missing shots to get yours, that's a problem. He's not a guy that you can count on late in games. Yes, he makes a difference defensively. He is, in my opinion, perennially, which means every year, one of the best defensive players in the NBA.
No doubt.
That's not good enough anymore. You in this league at this time, you need your bigs to shoot the three and have a mid-range game. You need more than just clean up dunks. And everybody keeps talking about how he leads the NBA in dunks because that's what he does. That's who he is. There's nothing there. I mean, what else is there for Rudy Gobert?
This is like people who say Zion's one of the best players in the league right now because he's got the highest shot percentage in the league.
He's number 2 in the league in dunks.
Yeah, like is he supposed to, is it a good thing that he's missing 40% of his 1 foot layups? Like that's why I say you can, if you're just going off the numbers, yeah, they'll tell you a story, but they're not actually indicative of reality, and that's really the struggle that I think Jazz fans go through, and so I really truly don't want it to feel like we're constantly negative on the Jazz, but we're not gonna sit here on this show anyway and talk about how great Donovan Mitchell is and how great Rudy Gobert is and how this team is just amazing. They won 10 in a row and lost one, and now they won one, and everything's kosher. Great. We're 20% through the NBA season. Where are we going to be 60 games into the season? Oh, I know. We're going to be the 5th seed, battling to be the 3 seed, just like they always are.
Yep. Kyle says you guys conveniently left out the first game where he had 29 and 20 in the back-to-back against Dallas. Well, we didn't, though. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
We talked about it. The reason he had 29 and 20 in that game is because Donovan Mitchell was out in that game, and they made a choice to feature him. And what did they do? Mike Conley probed the paint, and they essentially just played the lob game all night long.
And they got beat hard in the fourth quarter in that first game.
And so that's
Remember
why I say,
that.
like, find me. I love this. I love that someone brought this up. Go ahead, live on the 29 and 20 game, but go and find me another game, or go and find me 5 other games where he's put up anything more than 30 points. Find me those games, because it's few and far between. If Rudy Gobert, and I'm serious about this, if Rudy Gobert gave this team 29 and 20 nightly,
night.
Holy crap, we're having a different conversation, right? Like, that's a different conversation than what did he do? 11 and 9 and 7 or whatever you said it was last night. Like, that's just not good
9
enough.
and 7. And if you look at Rudy's game log, obviously that game was the highlight of his season, but that's one of the best games of his career. And Kyle, with all due respect, I guess my point is, hey man, it's cool that he puts up 29 and 20. Find me a game where they hit their full complement of 5 starters where he put up 29 and 20. That's not how this team works. This team lives and dies on the three ball, which, by the way, why does he get a lot of dunks? Because they shoot a lot of long-range jumpers, and he's the biggest bro on the court. So he's going to get a lot of rebounds. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's what he does really well. What I'm saying is, when you're in the NBA Finals and you're in the fourth quarter, he's not going to have a role.
Does anybody really believe that if the Jazz got to the NBA Finals and they were playing the Lakers, that Anthony Davis versus Rudy would be a good thing? No, because that's not the matchup it would be. It would be Gasol versus Gobert, and then it would be Royce O'Neal versus Anthony Davis, which would not be good.
Yeah, I don't even know what the other option was. I mean, I guguess you could have Bogdanovich play AD.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so I understand this pisses Jazz fans off. I get it. We're not coming at this conversation from the idea of like,
hey, how can we piss off Jazz fans?
Yeah, like we're not trying to do that, but you're also not going to come again, and I'm not trying to boast about us, but I am simply saying you're not going to find a show here that's going to say, yeah, he put up 29 and 20, and he's an all-star, and everything's cool.
Yep.
That was good enough when you were I don't know what he was making annually before this contract, but that was good enough when you weren't making $41 million a year. Now it's not good enough because the expectations have gone up, as they should. If you're going to make the money, expectations go up. This is why LeBron is held to such a high standard. This is why Kobe was held to such a high standard. This is why Paul George and Kawhi and the players of that cut who get paid what Rudy's getting paid are held to such a high standard. Would it be good enough if Donovan Mitchell gave you 9 points and 1 assist, making what he's going to make on the next extension he gets? No, it's not. Nobody's going to say that. And so that's why I say it can't be, hey, 40 million plus player guy on another team has these super high expectations, but then we're going to look right here in our backyard at Rudy Gobert and we're not going to have those expectations. That's just not, like, we can't have that. And that's why I'm saying the goal can't be the 5th seed or the 3rd seed or basically anything but the 1 seed in the West. That's not good enough for this team anymore. They're at a place where they've been bad, and we've literally I hope you people realize this. We've been talking about the Jazz since like 5 years ago, right? Like since Donovan came into the league, we've been talking about how they've been basically a 6 seed, and they've improved now to a 3 seed or maybe a 2 seed depending on how the playoffs play out.
Man, it's the same conversation every year.
Yeah.
They're good, they're not great.
Yeah.
They're on the cusp, they're just not good enough.
Yeah.